At a dazzling gala, a billionaire's playful challenge drew chuckles until a young janitor stepped forward. Then, with the eyes of the elite upon him, he played the piano like everything he had was at stake. The Meridian Grand Hotel ballroom shimmered under soft golden lighting. Crystal chandeliers swayed gently overhead, casting warm glows over silk gowns, sharp tuxedos, and carefully powdered faces. The air was thick with elegance, like money had a scent, and everyone there had bathed in it. Soft classical music played in the background, drowned occasionally by the clink of glasses and bursts of polished laughter. Tucked near the far wall, a baby grand piano sat untouched, its surface a bit dulled from age, almost out of place in a room so perfectly manicured. Elise Peters stood like a queen at the center of it all, 41, radiant in a deep green gown that kissed the floor, her smile frozen just right for the cameras. A socialite, heiress, and master of spectacle, Elise had a habit of turning ordinary moments into headline gold. She placed her hand lightly on the piano, turned to her circle of donors and reporters, and said with a devilish grin, "If anyone here can play this piano flawlessly, I'll marry them tomorrow." It was theatrical, reckless, and perfectly on brand. The kind of line people would laugh at, remember, and maybe even quote in page 6. The crowd erupted, charmed chuckles, amused glances, and the quiet murmur of disbelief only rich people can afford. No one actually expected a response. That was the point. It was a game, a joke. But then he moved. Across the ballroom, unnoticed until now, a young janitor quietly set down the pitcher he was holding. His name was Marcus Johnson, 27, barely on anyone's radar. He'd only worked here for 8 months, blending in so well most guests didn't know he existed. But tonight, something inside him stirred. Something deep, electric. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it was her challenge. Or maybe it was everything he'd been holding back for years. He stepped forward slowly, not looking left or right, just straight at her. "Do you mean that?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Heads turned. Laughter stopped. And in that frozen moment, the entire ballroom held its breath. Everyone thought he was invisible until he touched the piano. Elise blinked, her confidence flickering for just a second. Not because of the question, but because of who asked it. She expected flirtatious stares from billionaire bachelors, not from the man who wipes their tables. But here he was, eyes steady, voice clear, no trace of a joke in his tone. This wasn't just a performance, it was a reckoning. And they had no idea what was about to unfold. But what happens when a man with nothing to lose decides to show the room what he's been carrying all along? She recognized his face the way people recognize elevator operators or late-night cleaners, present, predictable, but never worth asking their name. Just part of the background. "I suppose I do," she replied, tilting her head, lips curled in that practiced smirk she used for uncomfortable questions.
"Why?
Are you about to make your big debut?" Laughter swept through the circle, like a breeze through silk curtains. One woman leaned into her glass, whispering, "This should be good." A man in a velvet blazer chuckled, already preparing to be amused for 30 seconds and forget it 5 minutes later. But Marcus didn't smile, didn't flinch. He stepped closer, brushing the edge of the piano with his fingers, not nervously, but with quiet confidence. "If you meant what you said," he said, voice calm and low, "then let's find out how real you are." The mood wobbled, just slightly. Not enough to cause alarm, but enough to make people glance at one another. A hotel manager subtly edged forward, unsure whether to step in. A reporter raised their phone, sensing something might go viral. Elise, always hungry for attention and too proud to backpedal, motioned toward the bench like a queen granting a request.
"Go on then," she said.
"Let's see what you've got." No one in that room believed he belonged until he touched the keys. If you're moved by this story, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us share more powerful stories. Thank you. And now back to our story. Marcus set aside the caddy he had wheeled in minutes earlier, its contents still rattling faintly as it settled. He sat on the bench, the navy blue of his janitor's shirt clashing against the polished black finish of the piano. For a moment, he did nothing. Just breathed. Just waited. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, "This'll be quick." Another whispered, "I give him 20 seconds tops." Even Elise raised an eyebrow, as if unsure whether this was confidence or delusion. Marcus didn't look at anyone. His fingers hovered over the keys like he was introducing himself to something sacred. Then he played. At first, the notes came slow and careful, like he was listening to the piano breathe before deciding what story to tell. The instrument wasn't perfect, slightly out of tune in places, but he adjusted like he knew its flaws by heart. The melody started to build, soft and deliberate, and then it began to move. His hands flew lighter, faster, guiding sound like water down a stream he'd traveled before. In seconds, the chatter dissolved. People froze mid-sip, phones lowered mid-scroll. Heads turned. Mouths stayed open. No one expected this. But what they didn't know, what not even Elise knew, was that this performance had nothing to do with a joke or a marriage or a party. Marcus hadn't come to impress. He had come to reclaim something. Whispers crept back in, but they weren't wrapped in amusement anymore. They were sharper, uncertain. A woman in pearls leaned close to her husband and murmured, "He probably just knows one piece." Her husband didn't answer. He was too focused on the music, eyes narrowed, waiting for the boy to stumble. Near the dessert table, two young men in expensive shoes exchanged looks. One snorted, "He'll probably end it with, 'Mary had a little lamb.'" But their laughter came too late, too hollow. It was the kind of playing that doesn't just entertain, it unsettles. Because talent like that isn't supposed to come from someone like him. Still, Marcus said nothing.
He just kept playing.
Shoulders loose, head slightly bowed, his body moving with the rhythm like he wasn't performing for anyone. Like he was letting something out that had been locked away for far too long. The music grew deeper, richer. Notes curled through the air like smoke. And somewhere between the disbelief and the awe, the crowd realized he wasn't showing off. He was speaking. And the night wasn't going to end the way it began. Now, each time his fingers met the keys, Elise's eyes narrowed. She wasn't just hearing him. She was studying him. The way his hands moved, not tentative but sure, like they weren't asking for permission. They were taking command. He wasn't playing for applause. He was playing like the piano owed him something. "Nice intro," she said, just loud enough to be overheard. "Let's see how long it holds." Marcus said nothing. His left hand dropped into a low, thunderous roll, while his right glided over the upper keys like a breeze, light, quick, controlled. The energy in the room shifted. A server stopped mid-step. The chef leaned in the doorway, no longer pretending not to watch. The guy with the champagne blinked and whispered under his breath, "That's not what I expected." What started as a joke was now pulling the room into something they didn't have words for. A guest in sequins leaned toward Elise. "He's really good." Elise waved her off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Gifted hands show up in odd places," she said flatly, but her voice had thinned. Meanwhile, Marcus drifted into a softer theme, aching, cinematic, then suddenly fierce. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was weight, emotion, presence. From the back, someone scoffed, "But he can't even read music." The insult barely landed, but Marcus heard. He didn't blink. He simply climbed higher up the keyboard and struck a ringing note so crisp it cut the air clean, then slid right back into rhythm. But still, no one dared ask what they were all thinking. How does a janitor play like this? A woman near the front leaned forward. "Where'd you learn that?" Marcus kept his eyes on the keys. "Not here," he said calmly. This time, the chuckles were different. Curious, not dismissive. Now, they wanted to hear the rest. Elise tapped the piano again, but her hand lacked the playful bite it had earlier. "Go on, then," she said, trying to sound unfazed. "Surprise us." The man in the uniform was gone. In his place was someone none of them knew how to label. Marcus kept going. The tempo surged. His foot pressed the pedal at every perfect moment, holding the air just long enough before dropping it into something fresh. The smirks were gone.
No one was laughing now.
Even the man in the gray suit leaned forward, hands still, attention locked. Elise stood with her arms folded, but this time her expression wasn't smug. It was calculating, like she was trying to fit him into a frame he no longer belonged in. The crowd, once amused, now seemed caught off guard. Something had shifted. The curiosity had turned into reverence. Someone finally stopped seeing him as a janitor and started seeing him as something else entirely. Marcus's fingers moved with a kind of quiet certainty, fluid and sure, like he wasn't just playing notes, he was unlocking them. His eyes never left the keys, but you could tell he wasn't fully in the room anymore. He was somewhere else. Somewhere only the music could take him. The melody dipped into a low, aching progression that made the air feel tighter. The bass rumbled softly beneath a trail of light, broken notes, as if he were unearthing an old, buried memory. It didn't feel like a performance anymore. It felt like a confession wrapped in sound. A woman in red slowly clasped her hands in front of her, her bracelet catching the light as her posture shifted. The waitstaff had frozen in place, trays hovering in their hands, too caught up to move. Then Marcus changed direction without warning. His right hand launched into a flurry of bright, rapid notes, while his left punched in with dark, rolling thunder. The contrast hit hard, like fire meeting ice. It was messy, beautiful,
Alive.
Elise inhaled slightly, quiet but sharp, though she masked it with a blink. She'd stood next to CEOs, politicians, kings. But this was different. This had no mask on. And somewhere deep inside her, a question stirred she hadn't asked in years. Why does this matter so much? From the back, someone whispered, "That's Rachmaninoff." Another voice followed, "No, he's mixing it. That part's his." Marcus's eyes shut briefly, not from emotion but from instinct. His hands moved faster, like they were chasing something just out of reach. The room couldn't tell if it was hearing a masterpiece it had forgotten or witnessing the birth of one it would never forget. This wasn't a man rising to the moment. This was the moment, and everyone else had just caught up. Then his left hand struck a series of chords that hit like a jolt through the floorboards. The pedal caught the echo, holding it in the air. For one suspended second, it felt like the entire room was vibrating. Elise subtly shifted her stance, one ankle crossing the other, and leaned toward the woman beside her. "I didn't expect this," she whispered. The woman didn't look away. She just nodded, eyes fixed forward. Marcus shifted gears once more, easing into a soft, fragile melody that felt like something borrowed from a dream. It was quiet and haunting, like a tune you'd overhear through a thin wall late at night, meant for no one, yet impossible to ignore. The silence between the notes spoke just as loudly as the music itself. No one dared move. Even breath felt like an interruption. Then, without warning, the stillness broke. His hands lifted slightly, and the music began to climb. Slowly at first, then with urgency, like he was chasing something only he could feel. In the front row, a man lowered his phone. He had been filming, but now it felt wrong to view this through a lens. He wanted to feel it, not capture it. Some performances ask for your attention. This one took it. Marcus's finale didn't just impress, it stunned. His right hand spun through rapid runs like thread through a needle, while his left delivered pulsing chords that felt like a second heartbeat. His entire body moved with the rhythm, precise but alive. Then came the final note. It didn't just end. It hovered, as if the air itself didn't want to let it go. And when the sound finally faded, Marcus didn't move. Hands on the keys. Head bowed. Still. The room exploded. Not a single polite clap. Just full-blown applause, cheers, whistles, people on their feet. Some stood without thinking. Others just stared. Elise clapped too, but her thoughts were elsewhere. This wasn't how the night was supposed to go. She tossed out a challenge expecting amusement, not to be outshined. And certainly not by someone she hadn't even bothered to notice before. And yet, here she was, wondering how she'd lost control of a moment she created. She stepped closer, voice lower now. That wasn't what I expected. Marcus met her eyes, calm and unshaken. The best things usually aren't. A few guests murmured approval, soft but real. But the applause gave way to something deeper. Quiet conversations rising in every corner of the room. People leaning in, eyes wide, still caught in the aftershock of what they'd witnessed. The story wasn't ending. It was just beginning, and it no longer belonged to her. Elise lingered by the piano, unsure whether to speak again or listen. She had built her reputation on crafting headlines. But now the narrative was shifting. Not away from her, but beyond her. A woman in silver stepped up to Marcus, smiling. "Where'd you learn to play like that?" He placed his hands in his lap. "At home. Old busted piano my mom bought from a church. Missing keys. But it was enough." The woman's smile deepened. "Well, that worked." A man nearby, tuxedo sharp, cut in with a raised brow. "No training? No school? Just figured it out." Marcus looked at him, expression unreadable. "Figuring it out is the training." A small laugh came from the back. Even Elise let herself smile this time. The hotel's general manager stepped in, a tall man with silver in his beard and the kind of presence that usually quiets a room. He placed a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder. "How long have you been on staff?" 8 months, Marcus answered. "And this is the first we're seeing this side of you?" "I never hid it," Marcus said evenly. "Just never came up." That reply landed harder than it should have. A few guests shifted in place, suddenly aware of how easy it is to overlook someone who blends in too well. It wasn't that he'd kept a secret, it was that no one ever thought to ask. Elise tilted her head, eyes narrowing just slightly. "You may have just made me break my golden rule," she said. Marcus glanced at her. "Which is?" She gave a half smile. "Never get outshined at my own event." Laughter followed, but this time it carried no mockery, only a strange new warmth. The room had changed. Jokes had faded. The energy was different now. A reporter stepped forward, phone recording. "Marcus, mind saying your name and where you're from? This'll get a lot of clicks." Marcus paused. "I'd rather let the music speak for me." The reporter blinked, caught off guard, then slowly lowered her phone. He wasn't chasing the spotlight, but somehow it kept following him anyway. From the crowd, "Play another." Others echoed the request. Marcus looked around, then shook his head with a quiet smile. "One's enough." Elise studied him, lips parted slightly. "Then I guess you're leaving them all with questions." He hadn't taken the stage. He'd become it and walked off without needing applause. As he stood, the crowd opened without being asked. Some guests reached out. Handshakes, nods, a few words they hoped sounded thoughtful. Marcus accepted it all with quiet grace. Elise watched him cross the ballroom, slipping through the space like he owned none of it, but carried all of it. Near the doors, a young waiter caught up to him. "Man, that was crazy. I didn't even know you played." Marcus gave a soft smile. "It's just something I've always done." The waiter nodded slowly. Sounded like a whole life poured into that. Marcus didn't answer right away. He adjusted the strap of his cart. Maybe it was. Then he disappeared through the service door. It clicked shut behind him. Back at the piano, Elise rested her hand on the lid, her thoughts louder than the room still buzzing around her. People were already talking about him, about the music, and the fact that the man who stole the night was the janitor. She didn't need to check her phone to know the video was already out there. A man leaned toward Elise, eyes still on the crowd. "You know this is going viral, right?" "I'd be shocked if it wasn't," she replied, barely blinking. But what no one in that ballroom knew yet was just how far the noise would reach once the doors closed. By the time Elise's car pulled up to her building, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, mentions, group texts, and 3 messages from her publicist stacked at the top. One text simply read, "Is this your event?" followed by a video link. The clip wasn't polished, but it was real, and that's why it was catching fire. Shot from a shaky phone, the footage showed everything. The disbelief, the silence, the standing ovation. In under 3 hours, it had already crossed 300,000 views. Hashtags were multiplying by the second. Hashtag piano janitor. Hashtag Marcus Johnson. Hashtag hidden genius. On Instagram, strangers were praising his raw talent. On TikTok, influencers were dissecting the guest's expressions frame by frame. You can literally see when the rich folks realize they messed up, one creator said, voice layered over the video. The comments poured in. Watch this till the end. It's wild. This hit different. And just like that, a janitor with no stage name was being talked about more than half the performers who chased it. By morning, Marcus was trending. His name sat next to global headlines. One screenshot of Elise's face mid-performance was everywhere, captioned, "When you challenge the wrong one." Meanwhile, Marcus sat quietly in his apartment above a laundromat, staring at a flickering laptop. Dozens of unread messages blinked on screen. A high school friend had written, "Bro, you need a YouTube channel. Right now." Marcus rubbed his neck and exhaled. He never asked for this. He didn't want to go viral. He just played because it meant something to him. He shared a moment. The world turned it into a movement. Back at the hotel, media requests were flooding in. Local news, national TV. A producer from a West Coast morning show had already reached out. In her apartment, Elise sipped coffee and answered a call from her publicist.
"This is big," the woman said.
"But some people are dragging how the room reacted. You need to say something. Be ahead of it." "I supported him," Elise replied. "I gave him the piano, didn't I?" "That's not how this works," the publicist cut in. "We need a statement. Better yet, something public. Maybe a reunion.
A duet.
A photo op." Elise didn't answer right away. Her eyes drifted to the skyline. "He's not a photo op," she said quietly. "He's not a headline. If he wants to meet, fine. If not, I'm not going to chase it." That was all Elise told her publicist. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his apartment, scrolling through the sea of comments under one of the viral clips. Most were supportive, amazed. But a few questioned everything, calling it staged, a publicity stunt, a setup to get attention. That afternoon, a reporter from the Carolina Weekly called. "So, do you plan to go all in on music now?" Marcus paused. "I don't know yet," he said. "I've always loved playing. But I don't think one video should decide what I do with my life. Not every spotlight means you're ready to stand in it." The reporter followed up. "What do you hope people take away from this?" Marcus didn't hesitate. That you can't size someone up just by their job title. And talent doesn't need a tux to be real. That night, the story hit national news. A well-dressed anchor introduced it as the performance that froze a gala in its tracks. Clips of Marcus played next to voiceovers from critics and influencers, breaking down his every note. Back at the Meridian Grand Hotel, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Guests called to relive it, some claiming they knew he was special the moment he sat down, despite what the footage actually showed. But the real buzz wasn't about the music anymore, it was about him. Elise knew she couldn't steer the narrative anymore. The emails flooding her inbox weren't about her. They were about class, access, perception. She was being invited to panels, interviews, roundtables. But she knew deep down none of it mattered unless Marcus wanted to be part of it. 2 days later, they met. A quiet corner table at Briar and Bean Cafe. No cameras, no press, just steam from fresh mugs and the soft hum of jazz in the background. Marcus arrived first. Elise showed up a few minutes late, sliding into the seat across from him. "Traffic," she said, setting her bag down. He gave a small nod. "No big deal." Silence hung for a moment before she leaned in slightly. "I owe you an apology," she said. "That night, I made a throwaway comment, and you turned it into something unforgettable." Marcus looked at her without flinching. "I wasn't trying to make a statement." "I know," she replied quietly. "That's what makes it worse." He didn't come to prove a point. But he did, and not just to her. He exhaled, something between a laugh and a sigh. People talk. Most times, they don't even hear themselves. She nodded, stirring her coffee slowly. The spoon clinked gently against the porcelain. "Your music, it didn't sound practiced. It sounded like a part of you." "It is," Marcus said. "Been playing since I was 10. My mom picked up that old piano at a church fundraiser. She didn't know how to play, but she had a feeling I might. Marcus smiled faintly. Turns out she was right. What about lessons? Elise asked. Didn't have the money. I learned by ear. Trial, error, and a lot of bad notes. He chuckled. Sometimes I'd sneak into the rec center on Saturdays. They had a decent upright. I'd play until the janitor kicked me out. Elise raised an eyebrow, amused. And now you are the janitor. Marcus shrugged, grinning. Life has a sense of humor. Her smile softened. So, why not chase it professionally? He leaned back, fingers wrapping around the warmth of his coffee cup. Because life chased me first. My mom got sick when I was 17. Bills don't wait for dreams. I picked up jobs. Music stayed close but quiet. Just for me. Some people play to be heard. Others play because it's how they survive. Elise nodded slowly. You know, that performance meant something to people. I've had messages from strangers saying it reminded them of their dad, or dreams they gave up on. Marcus looked out the window. That's kind, but I'm not trying to become some feel-good headline. I don't want charity or pity. I'm not offering that, she said gently. I'm offering a stage, one that's earned, not handed out. He met her gaze. And if I say no? Then nothing changes, she replied. You play when you want, how you want. But this moment, it's rare. If you're ready, I can put you in rooms that actually listen. He wasn't afraid of the spotlight. He just wasn't sure it knew his story. Marcus stayed quiet, thinking of his mom humming in the kitchen while he practiced. She used to tell him, "You're speaking through your hands." She always believed the world needed to hear it. He just wasn't sure if the world was ready. Elise read the pause. No pressure, she said. Just think about it. You moved a room that didn't know your name. Imagine what you could do in one that wants to. Marcus finally nodded. I'll think about it. They chatted a little longer about her foundation, his day job, the randomness of viral moments. When they stood, she extended her hand. Whatever you decide, you've earned my respect. That's not something I say lightly.
He shook her hand.
I'll remember that. He thought the choice was still his. But the world had already made up its mind. 3 days later, Marcus was back at the Meridian Grand Hotel, pushing his cleaning cart down the banquet hall. The front desk clerk jogged toward him, slightly breathless. You've got a visitor, she said. I'm working, he replied. She shook her head. Trust me, you'll want to take this one. She's not leaving till she sees you. Marcus walked into the lobby, wiping his hands on his uniform. A woman in her late 30s stood near the front desk, wearing a worn denim jacket and holding a toddler on her hip. As soon as she spotted him, her face lit up. You don't know me, she said quickly. But I've watched your video. Twice, actually. She adjusted the boy in her arms. He doesn't talk much, yet barely sit still for anything. But when I played your performance, he just stopped. Watched the whole thing. Marcus looked at the child. Big eyes, quiet, curious. That's good to hear, he said. Her voice wavered. No, it's more than good. My husband passed last year. It's been hard. But your music, for the first time in a long time, our home felt peaceful. I just wanted to thank you. I know you didn't do it for us, but it meant something. He stood silent for a beat, moved but unsure how to respond. Finally, he offered a soft, I'm glad it reached you. Sometimes a song finds someone exactly when they need it most, even if it wasn't written for them. After she left, Marcus rolled his cart back toward the hallway, but something was different. Up until now, the attention felt like something that had landed on him by accident. But now it felt like a door that was waiting to be opened. That evening, he picked up the phone. If that offer's still open, he said to Elise, I'm ready. 2 weeks later, they stood behind the curtain at the Crestline Hall. Elise's foundation was hosting a national benefit concert, and Marcus was the featured performer. He paced lightly, his palms warm. This feels different. Because this time, Elise said, they showed up for you. He wasn't stepping into the spotlight to prove anything. He was stepping into it because he finally chose to. When his name was called, the crowd clapped before he even reached the piano. No skepticism. No surprise. Just welcome. He sat down, took a breath, and began. His opening piece, something he'd written himself, moved like a memory. Soulful, precise, and full of heart. The silence in the room wasn't empty. It was electric. This time, they weren't watching a janitor play. They were watching a musician own the room. He played for 40 minutes straight, speaking only briefly between pieces. Most people will judge you based on a moment, he said. But nobody is just one moment. We all have more inside than we let the world see. He ended with the same piece from the gala. This time, it brought people to their feet. In the wings, Elise clapped, smiling like someone who'd seen something truly rare. Later, as people mingled in the lobby, they didn't just thank him for the music. They shared their own stories. Forgotten instruments. Paused dreams. Parts of themselves they thought were long gone. Outside, Elise caught up with him under the marquee lights. "You know," she said, "this could be more than a moment. You could build something from this." Marcus exhaled, a quiet smile forming. "Maybe," he said. "Even if I never do another show," Marcus said, "I've learned something." "Yeah?" Elise asked. "What's that?" "That what you carry inside you matters," he replied. "Even if people don't see it at first. Even if they laugh." He glanced back at the theater, where a few guests were slowly filing out into the night. Sometimes, your moment shows up uninvited. But when it does, you better be ready. Elise nodded once. "Then it's your move now." Marcus smiled. "Always was." The night air was cool as he walked toward the waiting car. He didn't know if this was a turning point or just a memory in the making. But one thing was clear, his music wasn't going back into the shadows. If there's something you've kept to yourself, music, art, writing, don't wait for permission.
Start now.
Let it out. You never know who it might reach, or how much it might change you. If this story moved you, be sure to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this.